Hey BookTube friends, welcome back to my channel. We've got some catching up to do. So the first book I want to talk about is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This was a buddy read with my good friend Mark over at Book Time with Elvis, and we both absolutely loved this book. This is a Halloween classic. It's definitely very atmospheric. It will get you into the fall vibes. It was oddly cozy, nostalgic, and sinister at the same time. It's not a book that is very gory or graphic or anything like that, but it deals with a creepy carnival, and Ray Bradbury is just one of my absolute favorite writers of all time. He always has something to say, and I feel like he's one of those authors that just has the ability to reach out and touch me, and there's always something in his stories that resonates with me. And in this book, he writes the characters of the children so well. I feel like in a lot of his books, he really captures something that is unique and special about childhood. And he plays with this concept of time and what it means for children, but also what it means for adults. And I can't say enough good things about this book. And ironically, at the time, I was reading Cirque Berserk by Jessica Guest, which is also a carnival setting, and of course that's a little different because it's more of an 80s slasher sort of book. But yeah, I was digging the creepy carnival vibes. So if you haven't done so, check this one out. It'll get you in the Halloween mood. The next book I want to talk about is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And this was a buddy read with my BookTube bestie, Lady Jane Books. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this because Lady Jane and I will be doing a live show at some point, so be on the lookout for that. But I will say this is a very beautifully written book that is really a coming of age story about a group of friends. It handles a lot of the tough things in life like grief, love, loss, mental illness, and abuse. And it is very graphic. It is very disturbing. And there's been a lot of hype surrounding this book, but I made it out unscathed. I did not shed a tear, and I wasn't emotionally wrecked by this book. But I didn't actually identify very much with the main character that I think most people may have identified with. So maybe that's why I wasn't emotionally wrecked, but it takes a lot for me to cry. And this didn't do it for me. So I don't know, if you read this and you cried, shoot me a comment. Definitely very disturbing, very upsetting, but you know, I made it out unscathed for the most part. So the next book I want to talk about is A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. This I listened to as an audiobook, and I think the title is extremely apt because this was a slow burn. This was a mediocre thriller to me. It wasn't anything super remarkable. We're dealing with the murder of this young man on a houseboat, and we follow these women who are all connected to him in some way. So one is a emotionally disturbed young lady who had a one-night stand with him. Another is his aunt, who is also grieving her sister's death as well. And then one is a nosy neighbor. So we kind of see throughout the book how all of these people fit into the murder. And yeah, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't Girl on a Train. That was great. Another Paula Hawkins book that I read, Into the Water, didn't like so much. I felt like it was kind of convoluted, and I just didn't care for it. So yeah, this one was kind of in the middle. The next book I want to talk about is Let the Right One In by this author, and I'm not even going to attempt to say the name, but this book was also a buddy read with a group. It's run by Summer over at Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats, and this book made vampires scary again. I feel like vampires have gotten a little too cute and cuddly and attractive, and this book made them scary again. I think a lot of What I liked about this book was actually the setting. The setting was extremely lonely and desperate and dark and grim, and I think that really kind of set the stage for this. So the beginning of the book, we see this ritual murder, and that's the jumping off point. Our main character is actually a young boy named Oscar who is being tormented by his peers, and he's having some very disturbing kind of revenge ideations, and we'll see that play into the plot as well. But this book had a lot of different points of view, which I really enjoyed because I feel like that helped to advance the story at a good pace. And the characters, I can't really say that most of them were likable. They were pretty miserable. Their lives were, again, pretty grim. One group, they were alcoholics who hung out at a Chinese restaurant, and I don't know, I really enjoyed hearing their point of view and how they fit into the plot. I really thought was well done. I did like the ending to the book. I don't want to tell you too much, but I do like how things were resolved in a way that was kind of satisfying. I will warn you that when I say the characters are unlikable, that's probably an understatement. They do some extremely sick, horrific, gruesome stuff, and they're not even the vampires. So, yeah, this is a very dark book, but if you are into that kind of thing and you want to be scared of vampires again, I would highly recommend it. The last book I want to talk about is The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, and this was another buddy read with my friend Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. We were introduced to this character of the Illustrated Man in Something Wicked This Way Comes, and the Illustrated Man is a man who travels with the carnival who is covered in tattoos. And these tattoos actually come to life, and they tell stories, and they kind of tell the future. And so in this little book, we have all of these short stories that are related to the tattoos on the Illustrated Man. So I thought that was a really interesting device to kind of tie all of the short stories together, even though the short stories are completely unrelated. Now, this short story collection had very few losers. I mean, obviously there were some stories that I liked more than others, but I mean, there were very few stories that didn't resonate with me. And, you know, he's one of the only authors that can talk about things like space travel and Martians and make it totally normal and relatable, because he's addressing kind of human issues and societal problems and all of these things in such a unique way. I just love it. And the epilogue for this actually was kind of creepy, and I really enjoyed how that left the reader. So highly recommend. Can't say enough great things about Ray Bradbury. But it's funny, the first short story in this I actually recognized from a TV show called The Ray Bradbury Theater, and I actually sent the link to Mark. It was, you know, typical 80s show, but yeah, I thought that was pretty cool because I was like, oh, I know this story. This is one of the stories I've seen. And the other stories I was not familiar with, so they were new to me, which was great. There were quite a few stories that dealt with topics related to censorship and books, which I always love about Ray Bradbury, because I feel like sometimes his stories are kind of a love story to literature and kind of cautionary tales about things like censorship of literature. So those are the things that I've been reading. If you guys have read any of these books, please shoot me a comment and let me know what you thought. And if you've read anything remarkable, please let me know that as well. But I hope you guys are having a great weekend, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.